We decided to just make this a really, really fun, fast-paced, lots of shooting, lots of lights, lots of education. So this is going to be a great way to go out. So thank you very much for tuning in. And I'm going to try to fit a bunch of questions in too. So make sure you guys are tuned in online and you're logged into the chat room so you can throw some questions that way. And we've got a huge audience here in studio, so hopefully we can feed some of those in as well as we're changing lighting setups. But just like you said, the title of this course is Sculpting with Hard and Soft Light. And let me go ahead and play our little info GIF right there. It's really pronounced GIF. I'm going to make the internet go crazy now, but the guy who made it said it's GIF, and everyone else calls it GIF. So I'll get a hard time either way on the internet for saying that. But what we're doing right here, what you're seeing right here, is going to be the gist of the course, all right? I'm going to teach you how to use fill light, how to use hard light and soft light, how to use directional light to create three-dimensionality to your portraits, how to sculpt depth with rim lights and hair lights, and how to go through a ton of different modifiers to do that. So you're going to be able to create really three-dimensional, sculpted, beautiful portraits here, and sculpture-like portraits, if you'd like, with basic pieces of lighting equipment that you might already own, and some really cool aspirational pieces of equipment like parabolics and different big octabanks and things like that too. So I'm going to run you through the gamut of lighting tools and how to really 360 degrees sculpt with light and chop out your portraits or product photography or anything that you want to make 3D and pop off the page or the screen. So let's go ahead and jump in. Here's basically what we're going to be looking at. We've got to learn how to control the light. So that's where we're going to start. Then we're going to talk about how we place the light and the direction of light and what that does for us and how that brings our subjects out of the image. Then we're going to talk about controlling contrast, because this is a huge thing. Whether you're a commercial photographer and you're trying to get a certain kind of brightness or aesthetic to an image, or you're a portrait photographer and you don't like those deep shadows that are drawing attention to like wrinkles or blemishes and things, controlling contrast is going to be huge, no matter what kind of photography you're into. And then finally, we're going to go into some high-key and low-key lighting setups. And those are going to be like those big, bright, beautiful white backgrounds that you see on the internet and on magazine covers. And low-key is going to be the very dramatic lighting where you see dark backdrops, and that's the gritty, sculpted light like in our opening photograph. So we've got a lot to cover. It's going to be cool. So jumping right in, I just want to talk about the quality of light really quickly. And hard and soft light, this quality of light is going to be harped on in every single YouTube video or Creative Live class or photo tutorial you see, because it's really the two different languages of light that we get to work with and we get to paint with as photographers. And what we're seeing here, or what we're looking for when we're talking about hard light and soft light, is that transition between the shadow. So let me just go ahead and pull two up side by side. This is our hard light on the left, and this is our soft light on the right. And I want to start looking at specific characteristics of this so we can understand the tools that we're using here. So the image on the left, look at the shadow from her nose. See how we have a very hard defined line? This transition is almost instant. It goes right from highlight to shadow, just like that. So it's great because it's going to help sculpt things out. Like, she looks very three-dimensional. The only problem is if we're just doing standard portrait photography and we want to make everyone look their best, we don't want to put Vaseline on the lens like they used to do 20 years ago. We want to use soft light so that that transition is more gradual. And I like to make this kind of a thought experiment here. This is a model with porcelain skin, all right? What if you're photographing senior portraits and you got this kid who's just like hopped up on testosterone and hormones, and he's super stressed about his photograph being taken, and he's got a big zit right there on his nose. It's not going to be too noticeable from the illumination or the highlight, but that shadow, that instant shadow detail is going to make a huge shadow there. So you're turning this little molehill into a mountain on the shadow side of the face and drawing attention. So as a portrait photographer, we lean towards soft light, because this gradual transition, it's not as obvious where the highlight ends and the shadow begins. It's also a lot more forgiving on wrinkles and scars and things like that. But there also serves this balance here between the two. So we're getting a little more advanced in this class, and I want to show you how you can use the two together to really define, but then fill to also create a little more forgiving light. So we are able to sculpt and get all the depth and dimension to people, at the same time also flattering them. Because I don't want a really cool gritty ab photo where the person's face looks horrible. Like, that's not cool. You know, we want a well-balanced photograph, flattering our subject. And in this case, we've got an incredible athlete who's put in a lot of work to get his body. So I want to show that off in the best possible way while still flattering the face. So he could send the photo of his head to his mom, you know, and put the rest of the photograph on his dating profile. So like, that's my goal with this kind of photography here. So how do we get a soft light? I'm going to talk about a ton of modifiers here in a second, but the basic rule with soft light, or the quality of light, is the larger we get that light source and the closer we bring it in, the softer it's going to get. So when we start out with a bare strobe or a speed light or small flash, it's a tiny light modifier. So I can bring it in really, really close, like this far away, and it's still not going to be any bigger than my subject's head. So what we need to do to get soft light is increase the size. So I'm going to bring some huge soft boxes in. We can use scrims, we can use reflectors, anything really to create a larger size. You see people go outdoors with those big scrims. They look like giant bed sheets that they spread out and they let the sun shine through. What that's doing is taking that tiny sun, allowing it to spread out through this giant scrim, and now we have like a giant soft cloud of light coming down. And we can do the same thing in studio with big soft boxes. So that's it. You bring it in close, make it big, it's soft. Hard light's really easy. Hard light, a bare speed light or a bare strobe will work because the light sources are tiny to begin with. So we're going to be able to sculpt with hard light, which is really easy to achieve, and then add some fill light with larger light sources, and we're going to need some bigger assistance from modifiers to do that. I've alluded to this a little bit. There are a number of tools we're going to cover, and these are the main tools, softboxes. Softboxes do exactly what it sounds like. They soften the light, and that's because of two things. There's diffusion material on the front that kind of diffuses the light out, so if you're like me and you maybe have like a sweatier forehead, you don't get that shiny hot spot up there. And at the same time, they also increase the surface area. They increase the size of your light modifier, and that's what makes it softer. So softboxes soften light through their size. The bigger the box, the softer the light's going to be. Reflectors, these are excellent for controlling contrast, which we'll cover in a little bit. The reflector allows you to bounce back light into the shadow area and then raise that up. So if we have nice defining shadows, they don't have to be 100% black. Like, we can get some detail in the shadow area. Umbrellas. This is the most cost-efficient, easy to use, and most versatile light modifier out there. So how many of you guys have an umbrella for your strobes right now? Just about everyone. Rain umbrella? Does it have a silver interior? It could work as a bounce umbrella. All right. Umbrellas are great because you can get convertible umbrellas. So anyone out there who's just putting together a lighting kit, I recommend you get one of those convertible umbrellas. And what that is a pop-up umbrella, and you can take the back black baffling off of it. So you can shoot light through the umbrella, or if you put that reflective black cover on the back, it's now a bounce umbrella. So you have a big, soft spread of shoot-through light, or you have a more directional kind of reflected bounce light. So that's my #1 recommendation for people starting out with strobes. Get yourself one of those reversible or convertible umbrellas. One of the umbrellas that can be shoot-through and also a reflective bounce. And parabolics. This right here, I could go on and on about and teach a whole class about parabolics. Thank you very much. And one of these is going to be great because the parabolic umbrellas are kind of like satellite dishes. They focus the light in a very directional, high-intensity beam of light. Or like the Breezes and the Broncolor parabolics can be spread out so it looks like this cloud, the very luminous, voluminous kind of soft wrapping light. They have their own three-dimensional quality all on their own. And we'll be using some of those at the end of the class. And they are just super versatile, super high-end, wonderful tools that I definitely want to introduce you all to because I use them a lot in my workflow. They're a little more higher end, so this might be the first time you get to see them. So hopefully if you do have questions, chime in the chat and we can answer those. So let's go ahead and jump in. This is like my show and tell portion. I love this portion of the class. What do we want to start with? Let's start with hard light, because hard light requires the least amount of size and modifier to work with. So let's go ahead and slide this guy in. Bartender style, I like it. All right. So this right here is the main light we're going to be working with today. This is the Broncolor Ceros. It is a monolight, which means this is the whole shebang right here. It's like a big speed light. Now, they have pack-and-head systems where the power pack and everything, all the guts are down there, and they run a cable up and they have a small flash head. When I'm working in studio or on location, I prefer something compact like this. All the power comes out of a battery, which is great, which means there's no cables, I don't have to plug anything in. And I can shoot indoors with y'all right here on a super safe set, and then I can go outdoors and I have the same light because I'm really comfortable with the equipment. And starting out, no modifier at all. This is our bare bulb, and I really want you to think about what we're doing with studio lights here or how they're designed. Most studio lights that you're going to see have an exposed flash tube, and the reason it's exposed is because it's going to be able to spread light in all different directions. Now, your small flash, like you have a speed light on your camera, is designed to send light directly forward, or if you're a little more advanced, you can bounce that off a ceiling or a wall. That's why the recessed flash tube exists, so it only fires in one direction. These are designed to fill modifiers. So these are set to fill softboxes and paras and umbrellas, so that's why you see this kind of design. And to get hard light, remember the rule? Small and far away, right? So we don't want to increase the size of this for hard light very much, but you're going to see some different tools out there, one of them being a standard reflector. What these do is they basically narrow that spread of light. So if I'm like, hey, I don't want to make this big and soft, but I don't want it to go everywhere, then you're going to start thinking of control in a reflector like this. So by putting that on there, I've now limited the spread of this light to about 40 degrees, which is kind of nice. Now I've got a little more control. The next way that we dial in control here is to narrow it down a little bit more with barn doors. These are great. You've seen flags like this to put on the front of your camera lens too, right? Like lens hoods. You see this a lot on film cameras and cinema cameras to stop the light from actually shining onto the camera lens. Well, it works in reverse too. Let me go ahead and put that on there. We've got this light now that we've focused into about a 40-degree spread, but say I don't want the light to spill on the floor. What if I want to light you in the audience, okay, but I don't want to light up the floor? I can just tilt that up like that, and it's going to flag the light or block the light from hitting the floor. Same with the ceiling. And then I can bring these in to spread out and light the whole front row, or just light you right there. So that's the really cool thing about barn doors is it allows us to narrow the spread with our reflector and then further refine it. And if you guys have watched Chris Knight's class or any other classes here in Creative Live, you've seen some really dramatic, tight lighting patterns that people do for portraits. Dan Winters is notorious for this. But barn doors are a great way to kind of mimic that look because it's an affordable way to go ahead and get a focused beam of light that you can put on the face for that really dramatic highlight. And then you'll also notice they're going to have some fill light in there too. So that's how they get that cool look, is they do a narrow, hard beam of light and then a soft fill, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about here for some portraits and also full body. So grids, yeah, let's go ahead and see these. All right, thank you, sir. So there's a couple different kinds of grids. You can further modify this down. This is called a fine grid, which means very, very tight. And if we got one of the cameras, you can close up on this. Let's actually go a couple of the medium. I thought he was going to toss both of them at the same time. And then we'll go to the other one too. Thank you, sir. So these come in different tightnesses. So do we have a camera that can punch in really close on these? So I'm going to do this one so it's easy. And if you look straight through this, it's transparent. And then as I tilt it just a little bit, it closes down. And what that does, what you're seeing, is the very limited focus of the light. So we've gone from a light that illuminates everywhere, that's hard, so it's going to create a nice shadow definition. But I want to focus it, so I put a reflector. And then I want to narrow the beam some more, so I put barn doors. And then I just want this tiny spot to maybe just light the hair or just put a circular kind of highlight on a background. That's when grids come in, and they sneak right in here and set right in there like that. And then depending on how tight you want that circle, you go to a tighter and a tighter grid. So fine, coarse, and medium. And I mean, these get tiny. Some grids even have a degree on them where they might say a 10-degree grid. That means like it's a 10-degree spread of light, super tight. So we're starting to get really surgical with lighting with hard light because the shadow is very defined, so we have to control where the edge of that shadow is, what shape it is. Do we want a round shadow or like a line shadow, like a more geometric one like that, like a rectangle? So that's how you start with a light, hard light. Remember I said it's really easy. You don't need big modifiers for hard light, which is great, which is why I love hard light portraiture because I don't have to carry around giant softboxes everywhere I go. That being said, let's go ahead and look at one more option that you see quite often, and that's the beauty dish. There you go. And the beauty dish is great because it acts much like our reflector there. It's just slightly bigger. So this is our beauty dish. Thank you. Beauty dish is about 20 inches or 22 inches. And what it does is it starts to increase the size of our light a little bit. So check this out in comparison to me. It's now a little bit bigger than my head. If I poofed my hair up just a little bit more, it might be kind of about even. But having the size increase now, remember our softness rule? The bigger the light source, the softer it gets. So by having this a little bit bigger, I can place my model close to this, and we've increased the size, and that's going to give me a soft light. And if I step back, it's still relatively small, so I can still get nice detail in my shadow, nice crisp shadows. So the beauty dish lives in that middle area between hard light like a standard reflector and a little bit softer light like a big softbox or umbrella. And that's why you see this used by a lot of portrait photographers, because they're able to get that mix. Soft, nice highlights and shadows, and then really dramatic shadows on the cheekbones and the chin. So if you have someone that has a chiseled face or a model with high cheekbones, this is a perfect intermediate kind of hard, soft light. That's a great way to start. They also have grids that you can put in them, as you saw. And they have another modifier called a sock, which basically takes your beauty dish and softens it and diffuses the light a little bit. So if you have someone with shinier skin and you hit them with the beauty dish and you like the shadow detail, but you don't like the shine, just put the sock on, and there you go. It's kind of like matting down with makeup. So I don't know makeup very well. I have some oil blotting sheets that I always have in my camera bag, but if I see someone with shiny skin, I'll throw this on my beauty dish, and I still get nice shadow detail, but I soften or I diffuse the skin a little bit. So we're all set with that. Thank you very much. All right, and let's go next. Let's go back to some umbrellas. So this is the next step I'm going to go up to. So we'll go to maybe the shallow umbrella, and then we'll go to the deep umbrella. If you grab the deep one, I'll grab the shallow one. Thank you. Cool. So this looks like a lot of equipment, and it is. But honestly, I know I'm saying this early. We haven't even gotten to the biggest pieces. But all of this equipment, I traveled from New York City with in a single Tenba roller. It's like the Tenba Roadie 48-inch. It's about like this tall, this wide, about that deep. It's on wheels. I can pick it up and carry it if I'm in a rush. And all of these modifiers break down into that single bag. So it's really kind of cool. Once you understand what the tools do, and you'll see that throughout this course, you can pick and choose which ones you buy. But if you start to be like me and accumulate way too much equipment, it still packs down pretty easy that you can move around with it. So we'll get to this guy in a second. But this is the standard umbrella that you see. This is a bounce umbrella. Now we're starting to get size, OK? So this is going to increase the size of our light and also give us back that spread. Because remember, without any modifiers, the light's kind of shining straight down, straight up, and all over the place. And now this is the standard umbrella reflector we have on here that narrows the spread a little bit, and then it bounces off this light and then becomes like a 20 or 30-inch light source and spreads out. But the thing with a bounce umbrella, most of them are pretty shallow. You notice that? Or I can come over there to that one. They're not very deep, which means I'm going to get a lot of coverage, which is great. I can go ahead and fly this up here, and if I wanted to light a group photo of you all, this light would bounce and hit you in the front row, hit our announcers here, hit all the guys over on the side. Like this would fill up the whole room. So this is great if we want a spread of light. And now you've seen these deep umbrellas start to become really popular in the industry. Broncolor's got one called the Focus 110. Profoto has a couple deep umbrellas. Elinchrom does too. And let's get a comparison to those. So you can just see how this shallow umbrella is going to give us a nice spread of light everywhere. And the deeper the umbrella gets, the more focused this beam of light gets. So this Focus 110 I love because I can set this up high and far away, and it gives me enough coverage to light someone full body, but it's not going to bounce light off the ceiling and the floor like a normal umbrella would. And the farther I get away, the smaller it gets and the harder it gets. So if I want good shadow definition, like that hard line and ab detail, I'll step someone back here. And then if I want a little softer, more forgiving light, I'll have them move a little closer. And in relation, this will become bigger. So umbrellas are great for getting coverage. But when I'm photographing people, I prefer deep umbrellas because they allow me to focus that light a little bit more. So you'll see us put these shallow umbrellas on the background, because if we want to light the background, they do a great job of spreading light everywhere. And then we'll use this deep umbrella to light our subjects, because it gives us a little more control. And this class is all about controlling the light. So good spread while maintaining control, and the shallow umbrella just gives us good spread. The shallow umbrella, again, another reason I recommend that is because if you're starting out, maybe you don't want to have that much control. And I'm a control freak, which is why I'm a photographer, so I say this lightly. But with the bounce umbrella, if you go out and you're like, I want to light an environmental portrait, okay? You walk out, you've got a beautiful area in the park, and you've got one or two people you want to photograph. You can kind of set a bounce umbrella up and turn it on and get your exposure right and forget about it. Because if people move over here, they're still in the light. And they move over here, they're still in the light. So it's very forgiving. So if I'm photographing a subject that moves around a lot, like kids or an athlete that I want to give space to, the regular shallow umbrellas are great because they give you nice spread, nice coverage, and you can kind of just set them and forget them, which sometimes is one of the best things about technology. It gets out of the way and allows us to become people again and kind of coordinate and communicate with our subjects. So understanding your gear and setting it is half the battle, and then just forget about it. And then the best thing you can do is start focusing on your subjects again. All right, let's go to the Octa. Let's do it. This is my favorite light. So this is what I call a cheater light. I said this in our first class too yesterday. Thank you, sir. The reason for this is because I'm 6'2", and this light's way bigger than I am. It's 5 feet tall, but it's also 5 feet wide. And again, the bigger the light, the softer it gets. If you shine a 5-foot light modifier at someone anywhere in like this whole distance, they're going to have nice, soft, flattering light on them. And then if you bring up someone really close, now they have 5 feet of light wrapping around the front of their face. So this is great if we just want a soft, very flattering, easy transition in the shadows, wrapping, illuminating light, the 5-foot Octa. For today, you notice we have a grid on it. This allows us to take that big spread of soft light and focus it a little bit more. So I can just hit my subject with it instead of it hitting the ground and the walls and everything else. So we take the beautiful soft quality, and the grid gives us a little more control. And you're going to see me today use this as a fill light, which we'll talk about in a second. All right, the final one is going to be what I call my scalpel when it comes to lighting people, and that's the strip. So if you could bring that over here. Everything's on rollers today in the studio. It makes life so easy. Thank you, sir. This is our strip light. It is what it sounds like. It's a strip of light. It's 4 feet tall by 1 feet wide, which happens to be perfect for illuminating bodies or for illuminating the backs of bodies. So we're going to talk about rim lighting and how you create a sense of depth with rim lighting. And I can set that back there, and it's going to be perfect to light me from head to toe and get that nice rim and that separation. If we go to the picture here of our subject that we used as our course title, you can see a rim light. We have a window there. So it's wrapping around and it's creating flare and cool effect. But if I want that surgical precision, I want a more focused rim light, I go to the strip. And you can further refine that by putting a grid in here too. So you're noticing a theme here. Just about every modifier can have a grid added to it. So you pick your tool for the quality of light you want, and then you add grids if you want to then narrow that down so it's not contaminating the rest of the scene. So that's what I got. That's a lot. We also have the parabolic back there. I'm not going to have the guys wheel that out. We will talk about that when we get to it. But the Broncolor parabolic is that versatile tool that can look like a beauty dish. It can look like a 5-foot Octa. It can look like a Fresnel. It can look like a reflector. The parabolic is great because you buy one modifier, you set up one modifier, and you can change the depth of it to look like a million different modifiers. So it's one of the most versatile ones, and we're going to use it in a couple different ways today. So that's all of the tools. There's a lot of them. I'll have a PDF here that you can download at the end, too, that lists all the lights that we used in every setup and also all the different camera settings that we have for this, too. So you don't feel bad if you haven't written down like every single thing and what it does. All right, so creating depth through direction. Where do we place these things now? We just went through like $1 million in lighting modifiers and 6 different strobes. Now where do we even start setting them up? Well, there's 3 different kinds of lighting or placements of the light that I want to talk about. There's frontal lighting, there's directional lighting, and there's the back rim lighting that I've talked about a little bit here. So frontal lighting is flat lighting. It's good for fill, but it doesn't do any favors to sculpt people out. And we're very familiar with flat lighting. I'll show you what that looks like now. It looks like a snapshot, all right? This isn't the best photograph I've ever taken. This is with a flash on camera, completely lighting the model from the front, and you can see here that there's almost no shadow detail. Front lighting is great because it illuminates everything. It's like if we want to go ahead and photograph product photography or flat lays, we want to illuminate everything so we see the texture and we see the product. It's a good way to light the face so we see the face, but that's a way to approach a product, not a person. With a person, we want to sculpt them and make them look 3D. So we're not going to do much flat lighting, but we will use flat frontal lighting as a fill. Say that like 5 times fast. All right. This direction of light, now, the farther we move off camera axis, the more contrast we get. So can I have my subject come up here? And then, John or Ken, can you pass me the ice light? It should be up there on the ledge. And the farther off camera you place the light, the more contrast you create. This is what I'm talking about here. So while they're getting that set up, I want to show you kind of this angle of light that we've got on the screen. This is that flat 3-dimensional frontal lighting, thank you, that we were talking about. And now as I start to move the light around her, watch the shadow and how much shadow comes up in the face. I've just moved the light over 45 degrees. Now she actually looks like a 3D person. Here she looks like a flat glamour shot. And then you can get even more contrast by moving around back to the rim. So this is rim lighting where the light's basically behind her. So let's go ahead and jump back here, and we'll talk about 3D lighting. The reason you want to get away from you having the flash right over your camera is because we want that shadow detail. And I want to show you just how subtly you move your lights. This isn't a big thing. It's not like, oh crap, I need to move my light like 10 feet over that direction. This is flat lighting on my subject. Okay? Try not to blind you. I'll turn it down a little bit there. And then I just move it over a little bit. And look at how we get shadow coming up on his cheek. Okay? Same. He's got great nose, great cheekbones. Watch this. I just move up a little bit. Now I've defined him a little bit more. We don't want to go high noon. Like, that's not what we're looking for. We just wanted a little bit. So when I'm talking about getting the light off camera, I'm not taking it very far. I'm just taking my speed light off my camera and literally moving it over like a couple inches, or on my light stand over here like a foot or two. And ideally, I started about 45 degrees and a little above the eye level. And that gives me a nice nose shadow, a nice cheek shadow, but I'm still getting the catch light in both the eyes. So you can go up with it and get cool shadow. Don't go down with it. We'll talk about uplighting in a little bit later, but this isn't a place to start with your main light. 3D lighting is all about just getting to the side just enough to see shadow, or going up just enough to see shadow. So thank you very much. It doesn't have to be a lot, doesn't have to go very far, but it does make a huge difference with your light. And it's all about illuminating and casting shadow. It's obvious now because we've talked about it a lot, but when we talk about lighting people, illumination is probably the last thing I think about. It's first because I just have to get my exposure right. But once my light isn't too bright or isn't too dim, I stop thinking about the light side. I only think about the shadow, because the shadow is what shapes people. So most people think, oh, light them here, light them here, light them here, and the shadow's an afterthought. The shadow's actually like how we draw people. So the whole concept of this class is it's like the whole Michelangelo thing, where he saw an angel in the marble and he just kind of chipped away at it until it came out. That's what we're doing. We have this beautiful subject, and we just want to go ahead and peel away the layers and show the detail in the arms, the detail in the abs, the details in the cheeks. We're revealing our subject versus illuminating and casting a light on them. We have to dig them out with shadow. So here's an example of hard light and digging them out. We've got some obliques here. We've got some ab definition. We've got great shadows in the cheeks. And that's using a hard light. That's a single beauty dish, kind of far away. We're getting cool definition there. And now what happens if I look at this and I'm like, it's too contrasty. I can see my subject, but it's not very flattering. I want more of a three-dimensional, I want a full experience here. Then I add a soft fill light, and it raises that up. So now we're starting to talk about two lights, sculpting with hard light and filling with soft light. And now we get this three-dimensional kind of hyper-real looking photography. And I do this all the time. Here's a completely different shoot. See the abs on her? And the neck detail and the great detail on the face? Look at how great those cheeks look. This was with one hard light. It was a small Broncolor Para 88. And then I have one fill light. It was a big 5-foot octa like that. So I'm able to get all the depth and dimension, but I don't have to make it look gritty and too contrasty. I can still make it look pretty. So using hard light and soft light is how we define and illuminate and fill to control contrast. And finally, we have to end the subject. We have to build some depth in there. We have to be like, where's the backside of this person? We can't see the backside of the person because we're using a 2D medium like photography, but wrapping light or rim lighting behind the person is what gives us depth. So here's our course graphic at the beginning. This is a competitive fitness trainer up in New York City. She had just won a contest up there, so she came in and she's like, I am shredded, photograph me like this. So I lit her from the front to get detail in the abs and the legs and the face, but look how she just kind of fades away into the background. She just kind of disappears, right? That's where rim lighting comes in. This rim lighting or backlighting is what kind of rounds out our subject. We light them from front to back. I want to illuminate, sculpt them, and then wrap it up. That's the putting the icing on the cake or the bow on the package. That's how you finish it with your hair light or your rim light or your backlight. And now we've illuminated our subject 360 degrees, and they look three-dimensional, even though we're viewing them on a two-dimensional screen or on a printed piece of paper. And bless you if you still print things. That's cool. Most of the time, we just see it on an iPhone. So let's talk a little bit about understanding contrast and controlling that, and then we're going to get into shooting. And I swear, all of this is going to make so much more sense once you start seeing it set up and shot. So contrast is basically the difference between the darkness, the dark side, and the light side of your image. And it's not a Star Wars thing. It's just an intensity thing or a contrast thing. Is this a low contrast or high contrast photo? Anyone? This is very low contrast. You can see how there's not a big difference between the illumination on my subject's face, the brightness of her shirt, the brightness of the background. Everything's about the same brightness. So this isn't a very contrasty or confrontational or riveting image. This is beautiful and soft and open and inviting. It's neat trying to find different descriptor words for lighting, because when you start to shoot and you're trying to interpret your subject's or your client's vision, they might come to you with all this flowery wording, and you're like, OK, how do I turn this into practical lighting? How do I interpret your words or the feeling you want into an image? Well, low contrast is one thing. Now, this is high contrast. So if you want something edgy and daring and bold and empowering, you might go more contrasty. And that means the difference between the exposure on her face and the rest of her in the background is very intense. So the background's like 6 stops darker, and her shirt and everything is about 3 stops darker. So this is high contrast. So working through that, kind of figuring out and envisioning what you want and the feeling you want, now you guys can start to put lighting styles to those different feelings and interpreting it that way. So low contrast, high contrast. So let's get into the practical of how we actually achieve that. All right? So tips to control contrast, fill lights. You've seen some examples of how I used a big soft fill light after I used a hard light. Reflectors are the quickest way we do this. How many of you own a reflector? A couple people? How many of you guys use it? OK, good. The reflector is amazing. You hit someone with a light, you get nice shadow detail, and use the reflector to build it up. That's the first thing we're going to talk about. And then also ambient light. So I can, in the picture of the girl out there with the blue sky, I simply used a slow shutter speed so that the ambient light from the sun was building up and was nice and soft and bright around her. If I used a fast shutter speed, the sky would have gone dark, and that would have been more contrasty. And finally, you can use special effects, like haze, or if you've ever photographed in the rain. It's so cool when light goes through the rain, fog, things like that. Special effects like that are what allow you to kind of see the atmosphere in the air between your subject and the background in your camera, and it allows you to bring out another dimension there. So let's go ahead and jump in. Our very first section is going to be talking about controlling contrast in the light. All right. So for that, we're going to start out with a hard light, because that's a great place to start for sculpting. And let's go ahead and pull the grid off of that if we could. And we'll start off with our beauty dish. This is a great hard light to start with. I'll hand that back to you. Thank you. All right. So we can kind of clear this out of the way, too, because we're going to get to shooting. And my camera setup is going to stay pretty consistent. I'm on the Nikon D850. And I love shooting this in the studio because it's super high definition files. I think they're like 47, 50 megapixels, something like that, which means the more megapixels, the more retouching I have to do. So it's a double-edged sword. And I'm on a portrait lens here because our first shot is going to be a portrait, and it's a 70 to 200. So I'm on the Tamron 70 to 200 millimeter lens. And that's good because the longer your lens, the more compression you're going to get to the face, which means it's going to render them more realistic. It's going to make people look more narrow. The cheekbones are going to look appropriate. If you use a wide-angle lens, it starts to make people swell out a little bit because of the distortion. So we're going to start with a telephoto lens. It's our Tamron 70 to 200. And we are going to be on our Nikon D850. Nothing special. I'm on manual mode here. And I'll show you what I'm going to do for my very first shot. So if I could have my subject go ahead and hop in here, please. I'll have you stand like right about here. All right. And you know what? I think I'm going to handhold this. He's tall. We got to go all the way up on this. All right, cool. How are we looking tether-wise?
We're good to go.
Good to go? All right. Perfect. So the very first shot I'm going to take, I'm not going to have any of my lights going off. This is kind of like my canvas shot, or I'm trying to find my blank canvas here that I'm working with. So I manually set my camera, and if you guys look over on the screen, you'll be able to see my camera settings. I'm going to be at ISO 100. I'm going to actually drop that down to 200 now. All right. I'm at f8. I'm at 1/60th of a second. I'm going to go to 1/200th of a second. And now if you look at my first photo, we can barely see my subject, right? That's what we want. I don't want any of the light here in the room, because we have all these stage lights on so you can see me. I don't want them to affect my subject, because I'm sculpting the light. So I don't want weird colored lights coming from fluorescent or windows or anything like that. So I started here, and then I ended up going from 200 ISO to 100 ISO, which will make my photo 1 stop darker. And I sped up the shutter speed just a little bit to make it slightly more dark. So if I take this photograph again, we should have an image that's almost completely dark. Good. There's not much registering there. That's a good place to start. And I always start here, and I always start with my camera in manual because I want to make sure none of my ambient light is going to affect my exposure. The only light I want is coming from my camera, or from my strobes. So let's go ahead and turn that guy on, and let's bring it in to right about here if we can. All right, perfect. And just like I said earlier, when I like to start with my main light, I like to bring it in, and this is on-camera lighting right here. All right, I like to bring it in, and I like to get the bottom of my light just about eye level so that the direction of the light's coming slightly down. And that's how we saw that little nose shadow and the cheek shadow. And then I like to bring it over just slightly off camera, just like that. Perfect. And that's going to give me some now sideways shadow. So I'm getting some depth down and depth and dimension to the side, and that shadow is going to make him look very 3D. All right, and I am not going to use a light meter for this. We're going to do the very scientific approach, and we're just going to chimp. So that's our very first shot. I like the shadow detail we're getting, so I like the placement of the light, but it's a little bright, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the flash down 1 full stop. And what I have here on top of my camera is a wireless transmitter. It is a transmitter, and the receiver is built into the strobe. So through a radio signal, they're able to communicate. And what's really cool is I can even set the power. So by holding down one of the down arrows here, I actually turn the power down on the strobe 1 stop. Let's go ahead and take that again. Excellent. I like it. So there's our first exposure. I even want to add a little more depth to this. So if I wanted to add more drama and depth to this, what would I do? Move it over a little bit. Yeah, the farther off camera this light gets, or the farther away from the angle of my lens this gets, the more detail we get. So you guys want to see a cheat? Just turn your modeling light on. Modeling light, there we go. Now I can see where that's going to come. It's going to give me a little more shadow on the left side of his face. Perfect. And for you sticklers at home, it's also moving the beauty dish out of the frame a little bit too. So I know I'm going to get some comments there. I usually do a vertical crop. Another reason I shoot the D850 is the files are so large. I can go ahead and shoot horizontally here, and then I can crop vertically and still have a very large file. So I know this is an actor's headshot. I'll be cropping this 8x10 vertical, so I know I can just take a nice large section and have plenty of file size to work with. There you go. You're seeing my mess of crops in there. Perfect, there you go, see? So that would be our 8x10 crop, just like that. Excellent. So now I look at that, and I have my 3-dimensionality and my depth, okay? I want to start talking about contrast, though, because the whole portion of this class is contrast. And the contrast is that difference between the highlight and shadow, right? So if we look over here, we have nice highlight, nice shadow, but these shadows are very, very deep, all right? If I don't want that completely deep, can you mouse over that, actually? Let's see how deep those shadows are. OK, there's almost no data there whatsoever. You can see that number. So pure white or overexposed would be 255. And over here, you can see that it's almost 0, which means there's almost no color data there at all. And I don't want that. If I'm in Photoshop and I'm working on a file, I want to be able to make it more dark and contrasty or raise it up. So I never try to overexpose my highlights. And I never really want a background, or very seldom do I want a background to go completely black. So we have to add something in here to boost or lower the contrast. So can we grab one of the silver or white reflectors that we have over there? Here's the first way you do it, the easiest way. Just get a reflector, OK? You don't always need to have a second strobe to do things. There is a benefit to it, but you don't have to have that. So I'm going to have John kind of hold that straight up, just this way. Yep, and I'm going to have him, that's perfect right there. And then hold that, and I'll have you moving a little bit closer. And can you step a little bit farther back towards the background? Oh, no, you're good. I'll have Temple stay right where he is. Excellent. Beautiful. And can I get a comparison between those two, that and the first one without the reflector? Let's see if we can punch in on the face just a little bit. Woo, there we go. There's that 50 megapixel file. I'm glad you shaved this morning. We just saw every detail. Beautiful. All right, cool. So as he puts them up side by side, look at what we did. Just bringing a white reflector in slightly, we were able to lower the contrast by bringing our darks closer to our brights. Okay, so it's a more easily appealing and approachable photograph. But we kept all the definition in there. So we don't want to completely obliterate the contrast. We just want to raise the contrast or lower the contrast a little bit so it's a little bit easier to manage. And now if I look at that and I was like, man, I like the darker shadow, I can just go into curves or crank my contrast slider in Photoshop or Lightroom, and boom, I have my dark, deep shadows and all my contrast back. So in the studio and out on location, I like to control my contrast and limit that range so that if I want to later, I can make it more contrasty and crunchy and crush the blacks, or I can leave it as is and it looks nice and beautiful and voluminous and full. I don't like 2D photos. I don't want to just have a highlight and a black shadow. I like to have that whole range. I like the tonality to it. So that's the first way I would approach this. I would use a simple reflector. And can I see the reflector for a second? Thank you. The reflectors have two sides. Usually there's a white side and there's a silver. This is the white reflector. This is a great way to start because it doesn't create competing shadows. And what I mean by that is the white is simply going to bounce light back in and raise the shadow side. If I had a silver side to this, if I open this up, there's actually a silver side. The silver becomes more like direct sunlight. It's a very specular reflection. So sure, it's going to bounce light and fill the shadow, but it's going to create its own shadow too. So that's why I like to lower contrast. I like to use white reflectors or white foam core, or you can go down to the Duane Reade or Walgreens and buy a piece of white foam core for $2 and just hold it up, and then you've controlled contrast and raised those shadow values a little bit. So that's a great way to start right there. Thank you. The second thing I like to do is use a second light. So I'll go ahead and bring this around. This is our 5-foot Octa. You guys are familiar with this. This is the cheater light, remember? Now, if I just hit him with an Octa, it wouldn't have all the depth and detail that I want, okay? Because unfortunately, we can bring it around to the other side, so it's easier to see. All right. There we go. Cool. So the 5-foot Octa, the softer light, remember the characteristics of that? You can't really see where the shadow begins and the highlight ends. We want that, because just like we didn't use a silver reflector because it would create competing cross shadows, we don't want to add another light over here that's going to create its own shadow again. I want one direction to my light. I want the light coming from left to right and then raising that shadow detail up. So for fill lights, I love to use soft light, because soft light is kind of like it's sneaky. Soft light just gets in there and doesn't leave much of a trace. So let's go ahead and bring that up. I'm bringing this in like really close. Can I actually have you walk it in? I'm going to look through the camera and I'll have you walk it until it's just out of the frame. So keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. Stop right there. I think we can actually go a little more. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. I guess I'm tight. All right, perfect, right there. Back up just a little bit. Perfect. All right, so I'm bringing that in as close as possible, which means it's going to be as soft as possible. Now I'm going to turn off my main light, because I always like to dial my lights in one at a time. It's a lot easier to see what you're doing if you have your lights turned on one at a time. So I don't want to overfill, because if my fill light's too bright, how do you know which direction the light's supposed to be coming from? Oh, wow. Put that one in the first one with the beauty dish up together. See how one looks much softer and one looks crunchier? That's the difference between a hard and soft light right there. But that's too bright for a fill. So let's go ahead and back just to the main photo. I'm going to turn this down about 2.5 stops. And I'm going to dump the power out of that. There we go. All right, and we'll take this again. All I'm trying to do with my fill light is just barely raise it up. OK, I like that. That might be even a little too much. So let's go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/10ths of a stop, which is a half stop. And let's take the shot again. Thank you very much for not moving. It makes it so much easier to do the comparisons. He's like, you're paying me here to just hang out? OK, fine, done. I like it. All right. So I like this as our starting point for our fill light. But you see why I'm doing this one light at a time? I wouldn't be able to see these subtle differences if they were also competing with this big, bright, crunchy beauty dish up here. So let's turn them both on. And we should have a shot that has nice definition in the face, great cheekbone sculpting and jawline there. But now we can see detail on the shadow side, too. Beautiful. I know before we even took it. There we go. So now we have that. And now if I want to, I can turn this up a stop, take another photo. We'll lower the contrast a little bit by raising our shadow value. All right. And I can do it again. Raise it another stop. We're going to lower our contrast again by raising our shadow value. That one comes in. You see what we're doing here? He's still defined, but by playing with the contrast, if you can look at those last three, yeah, he's still very defined. We still see his chiseled jawline and great shadow from the nose. He doesn't look flat, but he looks very full and approachable and bright. So these are very nuanced things, but controlling contrast here, we can create a different feel for the image. And then if you go back and add the very first one with no fill as well. Like, yeah, one of those. Perfect, look at that. That's what we did. All we did here was start adding fill light in. So this is closer to a 1-to-1 ratio where he's very bright. We could have had an on-camera flash for flat lighting, but it didn't look very appealing, right? But we could see all the detail. By still using a hard and soft, we can still see all the detail in his face, but it looks much more 3D. So I wish we had a flat one that we could compare to. I'll take another one here at the end. But that's the way I like to start with this kind of setup. And how do you think I could lower the contrast range even more? Remember how we initially talked about how the woman on the rooftop had a bright shirt and a bright face and nice fill and also a bright background? If we were to add a light to the background and raise that up, then we would have a really low contrast or high key image. So let's do that. Let's flip one more light on the back. And I'm going to turn these guys both off. All right. And where are we at? 6? OK, let's get a shot there. And now we're just going to try to illuminate the background. That works for me. Doesn't need to be pure white. We'll get into that next. But notice what we have in the back, if we can take a peek at that. We've got our Ceros, so it's our monolight, and we've got our standard reflector on that. So that is our L40. It's a 40-degree spread. And the reason we have that on there is because it's pretty far away. If you didn't have a reflector on there, it would be lighting me, it'd be lighting our modifiers, it'd be lighting the back of the subject. We're trying to control here. And a big thing about controlling light is to not contaminate anything else in the photograph. So I like to focus the light on just what I want to light and not let it bounce off a ceiling or a wall. Because if you're not careful and you have an uncontrolled light, imagine what that's going to do bouncing off the ceiling. Remember what it did when we bounced the beauty dish off of the reflector? It changed the contrast and raised the shadows. Same thing if I accidentally let that bounce off the ceiling. It would fill light everything. And maybe I don't want fill light because I want some shadow detail. So we've got that on. Let me flip everything else on. Thank you, sir. And we'll take one more shot. And now we are going to further change the contrast by raising up our dark background after filling in our shadows. And this all started with one hard light to define the face. Excellent. And there's our final photo. So let's do an 8x10 crop on that. And let me get another stop and a half into this. And you can just apply that so it hits the next shot too when it comes in. So this is what I would give someone if they needed a commercial kind of acting headshot. He's worked out, he's fit, so he can kind of go ahead and play those roles. So I want to make sure that you see the detail in his jawline and face, and we chisel out all the work he's done. But I don't want to make this too contrasty and scary with too much shadow, because he's still got to be able to play the relatable nice guy. All right, so I need to fill that shadow in to get a lighter, more approachable, happy feel. And I don't want it to look like I'm some amateur shooting in my bedroom or my living room, so I want to have that nice bright background so it looks, again, bright and inviting and low contrast. So that's how we would control contrast for a headshot or portrait, really easily with a reflector or with a big strobe so we've got more control. And then finally, keeping in mind the background plays a big part of the feeling of our photograph too. So we're going to do a switch now, and I'm going to show you how we can take this concept and how it creates, or we can use it to create images you see every day. So how many people buy stuff on Amazon? I buy toilet paper on Amazon because it's faster than going to the corner store to buy it, like everything. I'm going to show you what it's like to shoot an e-com or a high-key background, full-body shot, and how you can get it in camera, perfect white backgrounds, controlling contrast, great detail on our subject, and even a reflection on the floor, all in camera. And it's all about controlling contrast and using hard and soft light to fill. So let's go ahead and do a quick reset. And while the guys are setting that up, I can take a question or two if any have come through. And let's have you switch into that white shirt. And the interesting part of what we're about to do is we have a white background. So I figured, why not go ahead and put them in a white shirt and give ourselves the nightmare scenario as an e-com photographer. So we're going to do a white shirt on a high-key background with a lot of fill light. And we'll see if we can get it done here on camera live. But questions? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How are you exposing when you're doing your first light?
The first light?
That first, yeah. So at first it was too bright, and then you dialed it down, but you knew like by eye that you needed to go, I think, 1 stop or 2 stops down. How would somebody who's doing this for the first time know how far down to go? Oh,
good question. So I love how, so basically, how do you get that first exposure without a light meter? I love how we have digital, so you can instantly see it. But I love how lights now have a lot of control. Now we can do like 1/10 stop increments. You know, they're very fine-tuned. So I start swinging wildly with 1-stop changes to get me in the ballpark. And then I start to dial in like 1 or 2/10 of a stop brighter or darker. And what I'm looking for is kind of almost like a white reflection in the skin without it blinking and being overexposed. So I try to push the limit on that. So when I'm shooting just to my camera, I'll put my highlight warnings on. And that means when I overexpose, any portion of the photo overexposed, the back of my computer screen will blink. And it'll be like, hey, that's pure white, that's blown out. So then I'll be like, okay, dial it back just a little bit, maybe 1/3 of a stop. And that way it takes it from overexposed, hopefully just under the underexposed mark. And the reason I shoot for that just shy of overexposed is because I like the white highlight in the skin. Because if I get a white highlight here, I get more contrast between the shadow and the darker and more saturated skin tones on the face. So let's see if we can pull up one of those shots, and I'll show you. Like this one right here. I love this because look at the cool highlight on the nose and the cheek we have. All right. Now, if I had underexposed that a little bit, I'm going to cheat here, and I'm going to do this in post. But you can do this in camera. Had I underexposed him a little bit, it would have taken that highlight sheen out. And then I would have had a more saturated skin across his face, but less contrast. So I try to get just almost overexposed highlight on the skin, and that's where I like to live. But I always make sure that it's not overexposed, because then it's very difficult to get back. So that's the sweet spot. So visually, that's what I'm looking for. And on the histogram, it'll look like this. The majority of my skin detail will ride about here. I just want to make sure this mountain doesn't ever fall off the right side, because that means all of this is the highlight detail has then been overexposed, and I can't pull it back in the file. So that's a great question. You can use a light meter and try to get it, but skin tones are different. He's got a nice, rich, darker skin tone, so he can take a little more light. Where if I went ahead and jumped in there, and I haven't been in the sun very recently, so I would probably overexpose here. So you'd have to, again, by eye, kind of dial it down a little bit. And it's the same thing with garments. I'm going to have to change my exposure for his white shirt versus his green shirt, because the green shirt is darker and can take more brightness before losing saturation and overexposing. So that's by eye, totally. Yep. I'm not a light meter guy, because people change and subjects change. So yeah. Anyone else? Cool. OK. Well, what we're doing in this next setup, the guys are setting it up, so I can kind of run you through it while they're doing it. They are putting together what are called light trees, because it looks like a little forest back there. It's basically a bunch of lights that they're going to put on the background. We've got 4 Ceros back there. And if you're thinking, oh my God, how do I afford 4 Ceros? You can do this with 4 any other strobes, or you can do it with 2 strobes, or you can aim 1 strobe at the background and turn it on really bright, and that'll overexpose your background. The reason we use 4, and typically in studio we like to use 4 or more, is because we're going to have to make our background very bright. Our background, in order for it to get to go pure white, we're going to have to be about 2 to 3 stops brighter than the light on our subject. So if I'm at f8 on my subject, I need to be at f11, f16, almost f22 on my background. So that means one light is going to have to be on full power or more. So by using multiple lights, I can allow them to each work a little less. So maybe they'll all be on quarter power versus 1 on full power. And that means I can shoot faster because they'll recycle faster. So don't get overwhelmed by seeing 4 lights here. It can easily be done with a single light. You'll just have to shoot a little bit slower, because that one light will probably have to be on full power. And you saw we did with the portrait. We were just using 1 light. So they're setting up 4 lights back there. And look at the modifier selection we've used. We're using the small silver shallow bounce umbrellas. And that's because I want those umbrellas to be able to quickly spread out and cover everything, the entire background. If I used a deep umbrella, or if I used a reflector, a standard reflector, it would only light portions. And in my final photo, I would get like 3 or 4 hot spots on the background, and then maybe almost white spotches. So I want nice, even coverage, and I want it to be very bright. So 4 of them requires less work from each strobe, and the shallow bounce umbrellas mean I get nice spread of light. So that's why I set up my background like that. And with each of these, I'm probably going to have my subject right here. So I'll just have you turn each of those so that there's no light directly hitting him. So you can probably bring it in and then aim it straight towards the back. So what I'm doing now, working with John and Ken, is this is where my subject's going to be. And I don't want any of the background light to directly hit him, because then that would be a rim light, right? I don't want rim lights yet. I just want my background lights to just light the background. So what you do is you get in the position of your subject, okay? And you look, and you're like, OK, can I see directly into the bulb of this flash? And if it's like the semi-trucks, you know, if you can't see me, I can't see you thing. So if I can stand where my model's going to stand, and I can see into the strobe, that means that strobe's going to directly strike my subject. So we got to change the angle a little bit. All right. And then now what we're doing for our main light, you're going to notice I like to use a hard light when I use my main light, and that gives me definition. We were using a gridded beauty dish earlier, and that's great if I can bring it in close, because it's relatively small. Bringing it in kind of close gives me soft-ish light with good shadow detail. And we're going to use a Focus 110 umbrella, which is the deeper of the 2 umbrellas. And that's going to allow me to get a little more spread. Remember I said, hey, the deep umbrella is great because it can cover someone head to toe, but it's also going to be focused enough that it's not going to hit over there, the camera guys, or hit the wall or anything like that. And can you go ahead and boom this over for me, too? We'll just boom it down.
From here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or we can move it over on that side. That way the cameras can't see it. Or it won't block the camera. So let's have you bring it over and flip it down that way. And did we decide to go with 5-foot octa on this?
Yes.
Yep. Perfect. All right. So I was carefully bringing it. It's like, let's not knock any lights out. Perfect. So what he's going to do now is he's using a boom, a mini boom arm, and we've got it on roller stands because we got them. Okay, I don't always use these heavy-duty ones, but you should. It's nice because they have a big, wide footprint. And in my class yesterday, I talked about the importance of having wide light stands so you have more stable platform. But what he's going to do is let's have you move it over here and boom it over, and then kind of tilt that light at me this way. And you're going to see exactly why boom arms are important, because I want to get a full body shot of my subject, all right? And I can't get a full body shot of my subject if I have a light stand sitting right in front of my subject. So he's going to bring that over, and let's bring the legs like here so I get a nice clean shot by. And then we're just going to go ahead and tilt this doop, like that. All right? Now my subject is tall. I had to cast a super tall model here, so this is going to be interesting. So if I can have you step in, we'll start working the light around you. And this is going to be your stage right about here. I might move you forward, backwards a little bit, but you know the drill. You can just kind of like, we can get full body shots, see all the clothes and everything like that. All right. That looks about good. But see what I'm saying with the legs? So the legs this way, so one's not like jutting out into the shot. So we're going to do the same concept. We're just supersizing it. So the things you learn for portrait photography then will serve you throughout your whole career as a commercial photographer or e-com or products. It's all about learning the quality of light, the direction of light. So what we're doing here, perfect. That looks good. Yeah, it should be solid. So are all the backlights off now?
They're on.
They're on? OK, so let's turn them all off. And let's see if they're all on Wi-Fi mode, too. Then we can just put them on standby. So now I'm just tweaking this. All right, so, oh, they got me locked down. I like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to not knock these lights off the ceiling, but I'm going to try to bring this as over camera as I can, all right, and rotate this around. And what I'm doing here again, if you notice, the bottom of the light source is just about eye level. So I have a downward angle to the light and a downward angle to the shadow. And I have a bigger light source now. Bigger means a little bit softer and more coverage. And by using the deep umbrella, it's only going to focus at him, and I'm not going to waste any light lighting the rest of the studio. Why waste the light? Then I have to turn it up, and my batteries die faster. All right? And I'm also going to go ahead and do this one light at a time. Always one light at a time. So all the background lights are off. I'm going to go ahead and get lower here. Thank you, sir. And when you're shooting e-com and things, I'm usually on the ground or pretty low, or you do a nice little stage where you can have them set up so they're a little bit higher than you. But the reason I'm getting down lower is because if I'm shooting him full body and I'm standing up here and angling down, I'm going to get some distortion, and it's going to compress him, and his legs are going to look shorter. And you don't want to be like, OK, these are size large pants with a 32 men's waist and have him look like he's sitting there with like lost his shins kind of thing, OK? So you want to get down low so that you're flattering your subject and you're getting proper distortion and you see the proper dimensions. So I'm going to get down pretty low here. And let's see here. Do we have a tilt screen? That's nice. All right. Let's lock in. Perfect. All right, so this is going to be our first test shot. Might have to go a little higher with the background if we can. Is that possible? But we'll get to that. So let's clear our crop. OK. Looking at our screen. I'm liking that. It's still a little bit dark, but look, having our angle where we are. Yeah, if you guys can get. If it's not easy, it's fine. I'll raise it up a little bit. But what we're getting is nice direction of light here. So the light's slightly moving left to right. I'm going to make this a little bit brighter. I think about a stop brighter. And here's where this eyeballing comes in. It's like, what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for some nice highlights and detail on the skin, but I don't want to overexpose the shirt. Because I'd be a hack of a photographer if I was photographing white clothes and you couldn't see them all. All right? Beautiful. I like that. And I'm just going to put my highlight warnings on the computer. So we're using Capture One here. Capture One 11 is the latest one. And it's really nice because when I'm on my camera, I've got my highlight warnings on, so it'll blink when I overexpose. And when I'm in Capture One, I can go over here, and I also have highlight warnings in this software as well. So anything that would be red right now would be overexposed. And the fact that it's not blinking red means I'm still good to go. And I can maybe make this a little bit brighter even. So I'll go up 3/4 of a stop. And we'll go ahead and take this shot again. I'll go a little higher. It's good. Oh, perfect. You guys are amazing. OK, awesome. Again, Ken, John, thank you very much. These guys are incredible. It takes a village to work with this many lights and to work efficiently on set. So this looks good. We have our key light dialed in now as far as I'm concerned. But that's a pretty crunchy photo. And by crunchy, I mean there's a lot of depth to it. It's just very contrasty. So that's not clean and happy and airy like I want my commercial e-com photos to look like. So let's go ahead and bring our fill in. Let's go opposite the other one. Nice. See the biceps on that? All right. So let's go ahead and turn off our main light here. And we're going to turn on our fill light. And again, with the fill light, I like to bring it in as close and soft as possible. And let me have you just march it into the frame. And what I mean by marching is as I'm looking through my camera to see what my frame is, and I have them bring the light all the way in until I can see the light, which is as close as I can get. Now it's in the way. And I just have them back it up just a little bit. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Right there, perfect. So that's as close as I can get the light, as soft as I can get the light, without messing everything else up and getting in the way. So here's our warning. See how it's blue there? That means all of that is completely underexposed. So not worried about that so much because this is just our fill. So I'm going to turn that up a little bit. There you go. And I'm going to bring this around front because remember, fill lights, you don't want them to draw attention. You don't want them to create their own shadows. So by bringing the fill light around front, what I'm doing is I'm seeing less shadow now. So the closer to camera axis I bring that, the less shadow I'm going to see in the photograph. Excellent. So let's go ahead and turn our main light back on. And I think this is going to be a wonderful marriage of our key light and our fill light and should give us a nice, inviting, well-lit photograph, but still getting detail in the clothes in our subject. Nice. And our highlight warning, boom, has not gone off. Wonderful. So that's it right there. I exposed our key light until we were almost clipping the highlight, brought the fill in. Now look, we can still see every single wrinkle in the shirt, the definition in his arms. And that's key because sometimes you're buying clothes for the cool weave and synthetic fabrics and things. So you want detail in clothes. Clothing and textile photography is the last time you just want to use big soft light because it mushes everything and you can't tell the texture of the clothes you're going to buy. So the next step is our background. Let's go ahead and get our background on. We can fire all of them up. And let's put them, are they all around like 5 maybe? 2.5? Let's go to 5 on each of them. 5 is just like half power on all the strobes. So that way they don't have to work too much, but I still have a lot of room to go. So I can still turn them up really, really bright. And what we're going to do is, this is where we're going to use our exposure warning. We're going to use that to try to get that highlight, the overblown background. I could do this with a light meter. And if I did this with a light meter, I would want it to be about 2.5 to 3 stops brighter than our subject. So again, I want it to be about f16 or f22. But we're just going to go ahead and do it just in camera to eyeball it. All right. I'm going to mouse over. We got to go up a bunch. So let's go to 7 on all of them. And let's raise the tops of the trees. So let's go up like maybe a foot or 2 on the top lights. It's another benefit to using 4 lights in the background is I have the ability to spread out the light more. So because I'm shooting a full body shot here, I want to make sure that I'm getting pure white on the top and on the bottom. I mean, it's very easy to Photoshop, but when you're shooting 70 looks a day, 3 images per look, that's a lot of images to be retouching a white background on every single photo. So this is something we want to get in camera. All right, ready? Don't look into the light, guys. Don't want to blind anyone. Now we're going bright. Ah, there we go. Awesome. So we're getting there. We're closer. What are we at, 7? Let's go to 9 on all of them. To get f22 is a lot of light, which is why we want to use a lot of strobes. Perfect. We there? Don't look into the light, Ken. All right, let me take one more of these. And just looking straight ahead, Temple. Perfect. All right. 231, 231, 231. OK, so we're pretty close there. I'm shooting on a raw image, so look what happens when I do this. I can just bring my brightness up. I can bring, I have my highlights recovered. There we go. Woo! It's all back. All right, make sure you reset when you're messing around because it applies it to all of them. Love it. OK, so this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. We have a completely overexposed background here. All right, see how it's red, which means it's completely overexposed. See how it's 255? We have it there. So let me go ahead and turn on all of our other lights. And I want to take this photograph and talk about contrast. Because we've done one of the classic mistakes that a lot of people do when they're starting out and they're doing high-key photography. So let me go ahead and shoot this. And high-key, again, is just white, bright backgrounds and bright subjects. So we look at this photograph, and I know that I lit him properly in the front. Like, we had good contrast, right? Can I grab the lens hood for the 70-200? I know I lit him properly in the front, because we did our lights one at a time like we're supposed to. I knew my key light was properly exposed. I knew my fill light was properly exposed. But when I look at this, I've started to lose a lot of the detail in the shirt. So let me compare this with our previous shot here. The shirts don't look the same, do they? We had much more contrast in this than we did here. So what happened? Our front light didn't change at all. Why did I lose contrast in the front? Is the HDR on? Oh, maybe the HDR was on this one. Yeah, let me check that. So that's a really good one. Let's make sure we don't have the highlight recovery on that. Thanks for keeping me honest. That's why it's good to work with the Digitech. Yep, so bring that back. But still, now that's a good catch. But look, we still don't have as much contrast in the left image and the right image. Why do you think that is? What's that?
The light pollution.
Light pollution, exactly, yeah. We have made our background too bright. So this happens a lot. People are like, man, I want a white background. Crank the lights. Like we just cranked our lights almost all the way up to full. But in doing so, what we've done is we've now turned our background into a huge light source. So now it's like we have a giant softbox shooting back and polluting. It's bouncing off the wall, the ceiling, everywhere. So we've accidentally added fill light all around him unintentionally. So the goal here is to get to 100% white background, but not go farther beyond 3 stops brighter. So let's bring those back down. Let's go to about 8 on all of those. We're at 9. So yep, let's go back down to 8. So what I'm going to do is as we start to lower the intensity on the background, we'll still try to maintain that pure white balance, but we're not going to be so bright that it's kicking back and filling the shadows on the front. So again, that's why we do this with multiple lights. So we have the control to light the back and the front. But this section of the class is talking about contrast. So what if you're not photographing e-com? What if you're photographing like a musician or a dancer or someone where you want the nice glow and low contrast? Well, now you know how to create that. You just overexpose your background an extra stop beyond pure white. Or if you want a nice white background but with more contrast, then you try to get around that 2 to 3 stops overexposed number. So there we go. We fixed that. Now we've got a lot more contrast back there, and all we did was go down 1. So here's our last one, and then here is our first one. So we're getting more in line with what we wanted right there. See how we have detail and depth in the shadow? Similar to what we had there, that was overexposed. So this is where our happy medium lives. This is how we control contrast in a high key world. All right? We overexpose our background too much. It's nice and low contrast and glowy, and we do it in the front, and we have a lot. Or if we have it properly exposed, then we have a lot more detail. So let's go ahead and bring in our V-flats, because this is the final way that we add contrast, is through negative fill. So this is the last thing I want to mention. Do we have a reflector? There it is. Cool. So here's our handy 5-in-1 reflector again. Okay, 5-in-1 because they have multiple sides. There's like a white side, a silver side, a gold side. Now, why do you think they have this black side here? I think they just ran out of ideas. They're like, crap, we advertised the 5-in-1 and now we're short one, so just make it black. This is actually for something called negative fill. So you've seen how the white reflector will bounce in and will raise shadows up, okay? The black side sucks the light out of shadows and adds more contrast. So here we go. We have a nice bright background, okay? We've got nice hard light sculpting his face, soft light filling in the shadows so we have good balance, high key background. But what if I want more contrast now? What can I do? If I turn down the lights in the back, then my background's not white anymore. So what we do is we use negative fill to add more shadow to him while keeping the pure white background, while keeping the nice lighting pattern up front. So the guys have them set up. Let me go ahead and take this next shot. All right, and I'll have you march them in a little bit closer. And it's just like the white side of the reflector. The closer you get, the more fill you add to the shadows. The black side, the closer you get, the more light you subtract from the shadows. It's really cool. When I first heard about that, I was like, yeah, right, negative fill, like that makes no sense. It works. And let's have you go all the way now, guys. John, you might actually have to go more towards the background because you're caught on the leg there. But let's have you bring it all the way up just on the inside of the background, or I'm sorry, on the tile board on the floor. Yep, perfect. There you go. And Ken, come out just a little bit with yours, just so you're just overlapping. Perfect. And then John, come out just a little bit more with yours. Come back, back away towards you, away from the model. Perfect, right there. Yeah, that works. All right. And we'll take this photo again. And now look at the detail that we've got going on in his arms there. So let's go ahead and pull up a side-by-side of that one. There you go. Perfect. So you can see as we march it in, we start to add more depth and dimension to his arms. So That's the final way to do it. You can control contrast with fill light. You can control contrast by bouncing light with reflectors. You can change the contrast by overexposing your background. And then you can add contrast back in by going ahead and using your negative fill. So that's how we control contrast. So I'm going to do a quick change here if we can answer any questions. And we're going to go to a pure black background and start sculpting some abs and using some of those grids we talked about here in a little bit. So, yeah.
So since black sucks in light, why are the barn doors black? Wouldn't you want to maintain the amount of light that you have coming out?
It's a good question. So if we had the barn doors, let me grab one of them really quick so I can reference it. I got it. Don't worry about it. It's a big transition. I'm asking a lot for them to change this set out in like a couple minutes. So same reason your lens hood is black. So the lens hood is blocking light, but you don't want the light that slips into the inside of your lens hood to then bounce back up and reflect. So if I've got my light here, it's doing a good job, and physically its placement is blocking the light from streaming out and hitting the wall. The problem is if this was white or silver, it would not only block it, it would then bounce it onto the opposite wall. So if I'm in a narrow studio and I don't want the light to hit the walls, this would block it, but then it would bounce back and illuminate that way. So the reason it's black is because you want your modifiers to be light absorbing. That way you don't accidentally start blocking one way and accidentally bounce light the opposite way. So yeah, really good question. Now that's different from the inside of like a reflector. So let me get the reflector this was on. All right. The reflector is designed to do something differently. This is designed to focus the light but still cast light. So that's why the inside of these are silver, so we don't lose any intensity. So this is saying, hey, narrow your beam, but we still want all the light to go. So this is more of a focusing element, and this is a flagging element, just blocking. So just blocking and focusing. So they've got two different interiors.
Does that degrade the light?
Degrade the light? So like lose intensity? No, it doesn't actually. Well, less light is hitting the subject. It's kind of like the inverse square law where as light emits into a three-dimensional space, you're losing about 75% of it. So in that regards, it would degrade light. But yeah, this is going to be more efficient than this. You will lose some light going from silver interior to the black interior for sure. It's just like the tighter your grid gets, the dimmer your light gets. So when you put one of those really tight grids on, you got to turn your light up like 3 stops. That's a really good point because you're going to lose a lot of that light quality. The black eats light. Just like the diffusion does. The diffusion will absorb some of the intensity, and then you have to turn it up when you put a softbox on. So yeah, great questions. So we'll just do 2 of the strips on the back without the grids. And our 5-foot octa is getting retired. We got our subject doing some push-ups and stuff. I love it. Here's a little tip. Honestly, when you're photographing athletic subjects, I went down to Modell's or a sporting goods store, and I got just the resistance bands. And you can have them do like tricep exercises and curls and some push-ups and sit-ups and to get that pump going, to get the blood flowing through your muscles. And then it reads on camera that little more swelling that you get. So anyone into fitness photography or athletic photography, your subjects might be doing a little workout before you get them on camera, and that's going to make all the difference in the world for the photographs. Also, don't eat a bunch of pasta the night before a fitness photo shoot. That's another thing to stay away from. All right, so what we made here, let's start talking about what we're doing. I've got a custom box here that we made. Oh, it's our stage. So now we're going to sculpt him out like a Greek sculpture. And what would be a sculpture without a pedestal, right? So this is just 4 apple boxes that we painted black and put together. And the reason they're spray painted black is so they don't reflect or bounce light. We don't want this to act like an accidental reflector fill light below our subject. And I've gone ahead and we've taped 4 of them together. And we taped 4 of them together because we want it to be safe. I don't want him balancing on the edge of like one apple box here, so safety on set is always paramount. And also, we're getting him up high, just like I talked about we do sometimes for high-key ecom photography, is when he's up high, I can get a light really down low below him, all right? This might be too high because he's really tall, but we'll figure it out. All right. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to walk through with our key light first. So can I have you hop up on here? Let's see if this is indeed going to be too tall.
All the way?
Oh, yep, all the way up, yep. All right, this dude's tall. I got a tall light stand. We're going to make this work. All right, so my main light here is going to be our Focus 110 umbrella again, all right? And I'm going to, notice what I'm doing, I'm angling it down a little bit more. We're going to get more extreme here, okay? We started with a portrait, very approachable. Then we went to ecom, a little bit higher, a little more coverage. Now we're going to go to sculpting. This is all about physique. So again, the farther the light I bring, the farther I get away from my camera axis, the more shadow I'm going to get. So if I bring this high and down, we're going to get some nice deep shadow from his nose and cheekbones. Great pecs are going to have deep shadows, and we're going to get a lot more definition. So I angled it down, and I'm going to go up high again. All right. And we're just missing the lights overhead. Great. Now, is that above your eye level?
Yes.
Yep, perfect. OK, cool. Thank you. I'm taking his word for it because he's now like 20 feet in the air. All right. So we got that like that. I'm going to lock these down. These rolling wheels, these casters have little locks on them, so it's always a good idea to lock those so that they don't start sliding away on you. And now camera-wise, I'm going to have to get a little bit higher now, so let's drop our legs back out. And I'm shooting on a really right stuff ball head over here. This gives me a lot of range of motion. I'm going to have to go a little bit higher still. Perfect. Cool. How are we on the strips? Ready to go? All right. You can keep them off for now. I'm just going to dial this guy in. Oh, man, you are fast, dude. Incredible. All right. It's a little bit higher. What I'm looking for here, a couple of considerations, is I don't want to look too high up at him, but I still want to be a little bit lower than him with my camera angle, because that shooting up at your subject makes them look bigger and larger than life. So that's our goal there. All right. Perfect. Let's just get a test shot to begin with. Nice. Pretty good. Our subject distance didn't change from the light much. He's the same distance from our light, so our exposure didn't change much. That's one good thing about flowing from these one look to the next. And now we've got, check that out. Look at the detail in his cheekbones. By going up with our light, we now are getting longer, deeper shadows. So that's good if we want to go ahead and define someone like this. Not so good if we were going to try to take a picture of our grandmother or something like that, okay? So closer to axis, low contrast. Farther off camera or off the angle of your lens, the more contrast and more shadow. And then if I wanted to raise this, if I thought it was too contrasty, I just add a reflector, right, or a fill light. All right, so our main light is done. See how I'm hovering over his chest here, and you're seeing the values on the top? These numbers represent the exposure, what you'd see in a histogram. So 255 is pure white. The reason why red is registering higher than green and blue is because our skin tone has a lot of red hue to it. So I look at that and I'm like, OK, that's fairly bright, but it's not overexposed. So that's kind of what I'm looking for with the highlight exposure if I wanted to get more technical with it and more precise. And then I could also repeatedly go to different setups and be like, hey, I want his highlights to be around 225. And then when I bring all my photos from the whole day into Photoshop, they're all at the perfect same exposure. And I'm not having to go into Lightroom and make one a little brighter, a little darker, a little brighter. So if you don't have a light meter and you just have a computer, you can get some tethering software and do the same thing. All right, so let's turn that off. Easier said than done, right? I'm tall. There we go. The next light we're going to set up is our low light down here. And this is our beauty dish again. Okay, so our beauty dish is going to be a little harder, softer light. Or I'm sorry, yeah, harder and softer. But I have the grid on here because I don't want the light to fly everywhere. Again, I want my nice dark background like we have. So, and can you guys raise the black slightly? Is that possible? That's it? Okay. Don't worry about it. It's good to go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of change the rigging on this a little bit because I need it to go down. Like that. Perfect. All right, so this is one of those times modeling lights really come in handy. So I have a very focused light here because the grid is keeping it within like 40 degrees. So it's going to be like a tube of light kind of coming forward. And I want to go ahead and uplight him a little bit. So I'm going to slide this over. All right, and our LEDs are brighter than our house light, our modeling light here. Can we get one more sandbag on that just to be safe? All right. Thank you. All right, perfect. And now I'm going to do the thing I tell you never to do, the horror lighting, the underlighting, OK? And what I'm doing with this is trying to get the uplight on the pec and the abs and the arms. Now, this is too bright, but you can already see how cool that looks, right? So let me turn it down 2 full stops and take this photograph again. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Awesome. Now let me go ahead and turn our top light on again. Again, easier said than done. Thank you, John, for holding that. There we go. And we'll put them together and see what we got. Nice. I like it. And you know what? The screens look a little bit brighter on screen. So let me turn that down a little bit. And then just to get more contrast, because the bottom light I now feel a little too bright still. And what it's doing is it's filling in a little too much of the shadow from our top light. So I turned down everything a little bit so it looks more accurate on the TV screen, and then I turned down the fill light a little bit more so that I would still get the nice definition in the abs and pecs, but it's not going to overpower and fill the shadows completely from my top light. So I'm always thinking about direction and then contrast. If I flatten things out too much, I don't get the nice 3D pop. But if I leave my shadows too dark, then it just looks too crunchy and too contrasty. Look at that difference here. Ready? No abs, abs. No abs, abs. You weren't flexing on the first one, were you? No, there you go. Get someone to laugh and their abs look incredible. It's amazing. Awesome. Look at that. Hell yeah. Okay. I mean, heck yeah, we're alive. Okay. I get excited when cool photos pop up on the screen. What can you do? I mean, this is why we do this. So there we go. That is how we would get that awesome definition. Now, we got to finish this off. We're not done yet, right? So he's not, we've established some three-dimensionality, but we haven't established the depth. He's starting to fade away again. So let's go ahead and bring those rim lights in, guys. Let's bring them in and turn them on and aim them back. And while they do that, I'm just going to pivot this stand around so it's out of my frame. We're going to make it look easy, even though we're dragging like 50 pounds of sand all across the floor. There we go. Cool. And there we go, perfect. And now this gives me some options. If I bring this in with a position like this, I can bring it in really close, and it would be just like having the light straight overhead at high noon and getting those deep shadows. Being straight below, it's shooting straight up, so I'm just going to cut the underside of his pec and the underside of his arms. If I go ahead forward a little bit, it's now going to feather past him, which means it's going to fill in a little bit more. It'll be less contrasty, but I'm going to get a little more broader coverage to it. So again, just how you set up your light stands and stuff can help you a lot and make life a lot easier as a photographer. So we have a 20-inch C-stand and then a standard grip head and arm that you would find on a 40-inch C-stand. So we have a 40-inch long arm and a 20-inch stand, and these are perfect for getting these low lights set up. And as a photographer, I'm self-taught, so I grew up and I was like learning how to place lights, and I was like, man, this is a pain in the butt. Like, I'm rigging all kinds of stuff. So learning your rigging and working as an assistant photographer for other photographers and other assistants is a great way to learn how to rig things and set things up quicker and easier. So, all right, are those background lights on, guys?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, 6.
6, all right. So let's turn these off. And we'll take another shot here. All righty, cool. There we go. I like the rim lights. Perfect exposure, guys. Amazing. They're just like back there. Yeah, we do this every day. OK, so this looks good. I am noticing some things, though. What is this? It's like we have a specter appearing around him. See the like haze going on there? What do you think that is? That's lens flare. I have a lens hood on. I have a brand new lens that has great anti-flare coating, but I've somehow created flare because I fired 2 flashes directly into the front of my camera lens, which is a no-no. So the lighting looks good on him with just bare strips, but I'm lowering contrast and making a muddy image because I'm not controlling the spill. So this is where the grids come in. So let's put the grids on, and then we'll take this shot again. And just like one of our audience members brought up here, when you put a black modifier on, it's absorbing light. So it's actually going to dim the lights in the background a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and turn them up from my transmitter here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tenths or 1/2 of a stop. And that should account for a little bit of the light loss going through our grids there. Perfect. Glycerin? Oh, yeah, let's do that. Thanks for remembering. Yeah. All right, so we have a nice little mix here. I've been working with a incredible makeup artist this week, and we put together a mix of water and glycerin. You don't want to do 100% glycerin, but you can pick up glycerin from craft stores, and it creates an awesome kind of mix of what will mimic sweat. So you can ask your subject to run a couple miles before the photo shoot, or you can mix some water and glycerin together, put it in a spritz bottle that you find at any makeup or hardware store, and then we get a nice fake kind of sheen going on. So I'll let you go ahead and, actually, can you step down for a second, and let's go off? Yeah. That consideration is, too, when you do that, It looks like sweat, but it's way slipperier, or more slippery. So you want to make sure that you're not on any kind of hardwood floor or tile, because if that gets on the floor, it's going to turn the floor into an ice skating rink. So they stepped off camera, and they're going to spritz that a little bit. And again, talk to your makeup artists. Makeup artists are masters at finding these weird concoctions and mixes to fake sheen or get some highlights or matte things down or add definition or, in this case, add fake sweat. So the guys have our lights set back up. We've got our grids on there, and we're pretty much good to go. So this next shot should be pretty awesome. What's that? Yeah, hop in there, yes. Please, please do. All right, let me lower this a little bit. It's down a little way. Just gonna keep it centered. Yeah, there we go. Parabolics, perfect, thank you. All right, let's have you hop back up there. The key is Dawn. Dawn dish soap cleans off little oil spill victim birds and models covered in glycerin. So give them some dish soap with the grease cutting stuff in there and send them to the shower afterwards. So let's go ahead and get this shot again with the rim lights. All right. Excellent. There we go. Look at that. All the flare is gone. It's not super noticeable, but it's there. See the flare? Also, look at how there's more light on his chest. You see that? Just that little bit of flare bounced off the walls in the studio and started illuminating his pecs. We want this as just rims. I don't want that light bouncing off the ceiling and filling in his pecs. That's why I have a fill light. So just keeping in mind that control, that even a little bit of spill can change the contrast in your photographs. So let's go ahead and turn our key light and our low light back on. We've got our rims and everything dialed in perfectly. All right, ready? 1, 2. Excellent. And there's our final photograph. We have a Greek god of a model now in front of us, and he's on his podium and everything. So that's how I would go ahead and start really going to the extreme, starting slightly off camera with a hard light, and then going a little farther off camera with the hard light to get definition for a full body shot, and now going almost top down, up and down on him like a tabletop to get even more definition and contrast. And it's all dependent on what I'm looking for. All right? Here I wanted to just see muscles, so I want to go extreme with my contrast and extreme with my direction of light. Earlier, I wanted a portrait where I just wanted to show off that he had a great jaw. And then in the middle, I wanted to go ahead and put all the detail into the nice fabrics that we were going to sell online. And we were able to get all that definition through hard light. And then we were able to control it through a fill, through the background, or through sideboards from V-flats or a reflector, or my favorite, actually having a second light. The second light for fill is incredible. This is really cool. If you don't have the budget for a hazer or a rental house nearby, like a party store or something like that, you can order this like atmosphere in a can. I have been told it's very flammable, so make sure you're not on like a set. Yeah, okay, so there's like butane, mineral oil, and propane. So make sure you don't have an open flame on set to do this, but we have very, very well-contained lights. But basically, it just gives you a little more atmosphere. Way over there. Okay, cool. Ken, got that one? So they're going to go ahead and spread this between the light and my subject. You don't want to put this between the camera and your subject, because then this haze is going to go ahead and be foggy. It's going to lower the intensity. It'd be like a cloudy fish tank that you'd be photographing through. But if the light's behind, it's going to catch all the cool light from those rim lights and create some nice big sense of atmosphere back there. So let's go ahead and light them up, guys. Not him, the background. Let's light the background up. Yep, perfect. No, bad choice of words when we're talking about flammable aerosol. Perfect. And what I'm going to do here is this is going to be a 3/4. So yeah, we'll let that kind of sit for a second. This is probably where our crop is going to live, thereabouts. All right. Cool. All right, let's see what that shot looks like. All right, that should be good, guys. We'll let it kind of dissipate a little bit. Perfect. All right, and for this, you can give me some different poses where you maybe bring your hips away from the camera. Awesome. And then bring your shoulders back towards me. And look at how that cuts out his midsection. If you want to see those the V-cut lines, that's one way to do it. Men at home, if you're sending those selfies or anything like that, turn the hips and flex. Women, too, it narrows the midsection, so it thins everything out. Like, this is just posing basics, but it works really well with a dude with abs like that. So, excellent. Killer. Nice. So yeah, let's look at a couple of these. Oh my God, that last one is intense, right? It's incredible what you do. And all we're doing here is controlling contrast. All right? So if we compare this to the one beforehand, we had a ton of contrast here because we let the background go completely black. And just like we did with the photo of the girl on the rooftop, we had a slow shutter for a bright background and we had low contrast. Now what we did is we did some light we did haze. So what we're seeing is this light refracting off the haze and bringing the exposure up of our background again and controlling contrast. So we go from high contrast to a little bit lower contrast while still keeping all that definition. So that's what I've got for you. That's my last trick to control contrast on set, is a very explosive can of haze. So again, be careful with it, but check it out. It's much safer just to rent a hazer or a fog machine from a party store, but you do have to plug that in, so there are some considerations. But yeah, thank you very much, guys.